This is a true story about penny postcards and homesteading women. My mother died in 1992. My dad was 80 years old. In fact, it was just a few days after his birthday. My father was a solitary man and a silent man, and he was fading fast. And when my mother died, it really took the wind out of his sails, and I ended up burning up a lot of road between Missoula and the 600 miles to the little town in eastern Montana that they had retired to when they moved in off the ranch. And one of the things that I had to do, and I'm sure there's some of you people that have gone through this, I had to go in and clean 100 years of accumulated stuff out of the ranch house. It was one of the more difficult things that I've ever had to do. In certain respects, I'm a harder man than I like to admit to myself. But I have to say that this task punched some pretty serious emotional holes in me. When I came back from Vietnam, I was fairly disgusted with the whole enterprise, and I'd taken my officer's uniform and thrown in the garbage. And when I came in there 40 years later, I found that uniform. She'd pulled it out of the garbage. She'd had it cleaned and hung it in the closet where it was waiting for me 40 years later. And I found 2 large books, which I thought at first were photograph albums, but I discovered they were full of hundreds of postcards, penny postcards, that had been sent to my great aunt and my grandmother around the time that they came out to homestead back in the very early part of the 20th century. This is the story of 2 sisters who grew up in the heart of a community that was transplanted almost intact from Europe. It wasn't an uncommon thing. A community or perhaps an extended family would send somebody ahead, and they would find a likely looking area, and then the whole clan or the whole community would follow them and settle in that area. So and it's kind of important in terms of this story, because these 2 sisters grew up being taught by women who had been taught in turn by their parents, and they had been taught together. They were part of a community with a long history that had simply moved itself over. They'd kind of grown up as apprentices, I think, to their mothers and their aunts. And as Anna and Dicka began growing up and moving away out of this women's community, which is kind of the theme or a sub-theme of what I'm talking about, they started moving away from this community that they were extremely bonded to. They were extremely bonded to. And as they moved away, these postcards followed them from the women of that community, singing songs across America to them through letters and penny postcards of nostalgia, news sharing, songs of sorrow, joy, mutual encouragement, teasing, and love, until even the echoes of that song had died away. Sometimes I felt in reading these cards that the women were trying to hold Aunt Dicka Lee and Anna Lee, trying to hold them into that old community, even though they were on their way away. I'd like to read a brief sampling of these postcards. Hello, Annie, how are you? As I have forgotten what number or letter that thread was, would you please be as kind to let me know? There is a dance tonight in town, but I'm not there. Have you forgotten the picture you were going to let me have? Sorry I've not answered your letter, but I have just been so awfully busy, have not had hardly time to blow my nose. 15 cows in the program now. I was wishing you were here last week. Canute and I were alone. I suppose you are lonesome now since Dicka left you, but as long as you got old John, you ought to be satisfied. Can you remember where you put the sweet peas? I love this stuff.